My name is Otto Klein, and as the owner of several waste management companies, I'm known around town as the Garbage King. It's a title I wear proudly, though it doesn't exactly impress my wife, Janet Carson. Janet, a lawyer with her own professional world, kept her maiden name from the start, making it clear that her identity stood apart from mine, at least when it came to her career. Over time, though, I began to wonder if that wasn't the case in other parts of her life as well. She used her maiden name exclusively, even in social settings, as though her marriage to me were simply a footnote in her story. When I met Janet, my occupation didn't seem to bother her. In fact, she was more than happy to let me cover her law school tuition, a costly investment that set her up for the success she enjoys today. Before deciding to become a lawyer herself, she'd been working as a paralegal, convinced that she was just as sharp as any of the lawyers she supported day in and day out. I admired her ambition then. It was one of the things that made me fall in love with her. However, things changed once she joined a prestigious law firm. Suddenly, the job title that once paid for her schooling now seemed beneath her. She began to see me as something less than, a man who cleaned up the city's messes while she rose among godlike barristers. Not long after she landed her job, the late nights started. Our time together dwindled, our conversations grew tense, and I noticed a newfound air of detachment in her that I couldn't ignore. The intimacy we once shared felt like a distant memory, and, to make matters worse, I sensed something insidious lurking beneath her dismissive attitude. My instincts told me she was having an affair. I didn't need hard evidence to understand that Janet's gaze was fixed elsewhere, most likely on someone in her world of suits and skyscrapers. If it was another lawyer she was seeing, I would need proof. Proof that would hold up in a courtroom. Without it, I'd be facing a divorce where she'd walk away with half of my assets, including a share of the businesses I'd built from the ground up. But if I could document her infidelity, especially if it involved someone from her firm, there was a chance I could sue her agency. Her firm wouldn't want the scandal, let alone the potential loss of clients, so I assumed they'd offer a quiet payout to avoid the fallout. Looking back, maybe my thinking was a little faulty, but at the time, it was the best plan I had to protect what I'd built. Each December, Janet's office hosts an annual Christmas party, a night full of holiday cheer and corporate networking, and each year she invited me. Each year I declined. This year, however, I accepted. The surprise on her face when I told her I'd be going was all the confirmation I needed. She wasn't thrilled by the idea. "Oh, Otto, there won't be anyone there for you to talk to," she stammered, offering what felt like a pre-rehearsed line. "It's just going to be a bunch of lawyers bragging about their billing hours. Do you really want to spend your night listening to that?" I held my ground. "I don't mind," I said casually, offering her a smile. "Besides, it's worth it if it means spending the evening with you." But what I was really thinking was that I'd be keeping an eye on her, observing, waiting to see if I could figure out who this mystery man was. In the days leading up to the party, Janet grew increasingly nervous. Every time the event came up, she would mention some new reason I might want to stay home. "You know," she said one evening, "if you decide you'd rather not go, I completely understand. It's just not really your crowd." Her transparent efforts were almost amusing, and each time I responded with enthusiasm, telling her I was looking forward to the event. Finally, the night of the party arrived. As Janet got ready, her final attempt to dissuade me surfaced. "I really hate to see you have a miserable time, Otto. Are you absolutely sure you want to come?" She looked at me in the mirror, feigning concern, but her voice gave away the tension simmering just below the surface. "Yes, dear, I'm sure." What she didn't realize was that it wasn't my appearance that worried her, or whether I'd feel out of place. No, she was worried about what I might see. I consider myself reasonably handsome and in pretty good shape for my age. That night, I was dressed in an Armani suit, not exactly cheap attire. I wasn't some sloppy back alley character, I just happened to be in the waste management business. Janet always winced whenever I jokingly reminded her that, in her way, she dealt with garbage too. We arrived at the party in the second wave of attendees, aiming for the right amount of fashionable lateness. Most tables were already full, but we managed to find one near the dance floor, sharing it with only one other couple so far. Settling in, I offered to grab drinks for us both. That's when the first encounter of the evening caught me off guard. As I stood in line, a man who appeared to be one of the firm's lawyers looked me over and struck up a conversation. "I don't believe we've met before. Who are you here with?" "My wife, Janet Carson Klein," I replied, watching his expression closely. "Janet? I didn't think she was still married," he commented, his tone full of surprise. "Yes, we've been married happily for 8 years," I said before adding a subtle correction. "Actually, we've been married for over 10 years now." The man was momentarily stunned, but then he let out a laugh, assuming I was joking. It hit me then how often the truth really is stranger than fiction. Throughout the evening, I overheard people tossing around the nickname Garbage King in hushed tones whenever I was nearby. Their comments were often punctuated with smug, snide laughter. I expected this crowd to be snooty. It's why I had always avoided these events. But witnessing Janet's colleagues treat me as if I were less than nothing reminded me how she'd come to see me in a similar light. Watching her from our table, I observed Janet mingling with a host of lawyers, paralegals, and other guests, maintaining polite small talk during the dinner. Then the dancing began, and I saw my chance. When I asked Janet to join me, she looked like she was barely able to tolerate my presence. Ignoring her reluctance, I took her hand and led her out to the floor. I tried to keep her close, but it wasn't long before other men cut in, eager to take my place. She seemed to welcome it, moving seamlessly between fast dances and slow, intimate ones, each time with a different partner. Eventually, I resigned myself to sitting back and watching. My suspicions were already on high alert. About an hour into the dancing, a distinguished-looking man approached our table. Unlike the others, he didn't even glance in my direction. He looked straight at Janet. Without saying a word to me, he extended his hand, and she took it, her face lighting up as she stood. They moved to the dance floor together, and I couldn't look away. Her body language was far too familiar with his, hinting at something between them that went beyond innocent friendship. I was looking for evidence, though. Something concrete I could use if this turned into a legal battle. But so far, I only had suspicions. Then I remembered a skill I'd rarely had to use in recent years. Janet didn't know this, but early in my career, I'd been recruited by the CIA out of college. My work there was brief, cut short by a leak that compromised my cover. Still, I'd been trained in lip reading and had taken part in a number of covert operations. My accuracy in reading lips, especially from a distance, was unmatched. I moved to a spot where I could see her lips as she conversed with her dance partner. From their positioning, I could only make out Janet's words, but what I saw was more than enough. "Did you get the room for tonight?" she asked. The man, whom I'll call M, replied, though I couldn't see his exact response. "Room 322? Janet's voice was tinged with excitement. Then she continued, "Yes, I just put it in his drink a few minutes ago." She paused, listening to him. "I can't believe you planned for us to spend the night together in the same room my husband is sleeping in. That's so risky." She leaned in closer. "Are you sure he won't wake up too soon?" M must have reassured her because she laughed softly. "Oh, Stanley, I'm so ready." That was enough for me. I accidentally spilled my drink on myself and excused myself from the table, heading for the restroom but moving instead toward the exit. My mind was racing, and I hoped that whatever they'd slipped into my drink hadn't taken full effect yet. I was wrong. My last memory was of bright headlights as I veered off the road. When I regained consciousness, the sterile lights and sharp smells of antiseptic told me I was in a hospital. A nurse was standing by my bed, but my attention quickly shifted to the door as Janet entered the room. Fury surged within me. "Get her out of here!" I yelled, sitting up abruptly. Janet turned and fled, but I continued shouting, "She's the one who tried to kill me. I need to speak to a police officer right now." The staff tried to calm me down, treating my reaction as though it were a psychotic episode. I took a deep breath and leveled my tone, staring the nurse down. "If I don't see a policeman here in the next 15 minutes, I'll be filing a lawsuit against this hospital for obstructing justice. Run a toxicology screen for any sedatives. I was drugged by my wife and her lover, and they nearly killed me." My threat worked, and within minutes, a police officer was at my bedside, taking my statement. I explained that I'd overheard my wife and her lover discussing their plan to drug me, and while I didn't mention lip reading, the officer seemed persuaded. The hospital's toxicology report confirmed my story. The amount of sedatives in my system was more than enough to render me unconscious. and if I'd drunk the entire glass, it could have killed me. For the first time, the term attempted murder entered the conversation, and the gravity of the situation hit me. Within hours, Janet and her lover Stanley were arrested. Initially, they assumed their only crime was an illicit affair and tried to reason with me to keep quiet. But the charges leveled against them were far more severe. Janet didn't bother apologizing for her betrayal. Her focus was on defending her innocence regarding the attempted murder. I immediately cut off all financial ties, withdrawing our shared funds and severing any connection that might support her defense. Her father was forced to cover her legal fees while I prepared for the impending trial. During the proceedings, the toxicology report and my lip-reading skills became central to the case. The defense tried to undermine my testimony, suggesting that lip-reading wasn't foolproof. My former colleagues from the CIA testified to my exceptional accuracy, bolstering my account. The defense's attempt to claim I had drugged myself for financial gain fell flat, and the judge seemed unimpressed by their alternative theories. The evidence spoke louder than any denial, and both Janet and Stanley would soon face the consequences of their actions. The courtroom was buzzing as the trial neared its end. Janet's defense team, in one last-ditch attempt, argued there was no solid proof she had slipped the drugs into my drink. A police officer, Officer Haskins, testified that no one had seen Janet add anything suspicious. However, before he could wrap up, an elderly woman in the audience kept waving for the district attorney's attention. The commotion grew until the district attorney finally asked for a brief recess to address her concerns. As the assistant attorney approached the woman, I saw Janet's face pale. She leaned toward her lawyer, whispering in a panic, clearly agitated by the elderly woman's unexpected presence. The district attorney returned from recess with a surprising request. The woman would serve as a rebuttal witness. Janet's lawyer, realizing the situation was spiraling, requested another recess to discuss a change of plea. Under intense pressure and with no clear escape, Janet decided to plead guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence of 3 to 5 years. Stanley, on the other hand, vehemently objected, shouting at his own lawyer. The district attorney accepted Janet's offer. The elderly witness then revealed that Janet had, in fact, added something to my drink, claiming it was a hangover medicine. Officer Haskins' questioning had focused narrowly on whether Janet had added knockout powder, which the witness had denied, assuming it was harmless. Months later, the case was retried, with Janet now serving as the prosecution's primary witness against Stanley. Her testimony painted him as the mastermind, claiming he had seduced her and insisted on drugging me to avoid interference. Stanley countered by portraying Janet as the real orchestrator, accusing her of intentionally overdosing me to secure her freedom and an inheritance if I died. His lawyer suggested Janet had led Stanley on, planning to leave him just as ruthlessly. When the dust settled, the jury believed Janet, and Stanley received a 10 to 15-year sentence. Janet's earlier plea kept her time behind bars lower, at 3 to 5 years. At Stanley's sentencing, I gave my final statement. With genuine emotion, I recounted, "I should be lying in Riverside Cemetery instead of sitting in this courtroom. My wife and her lover should be the ones celebrating their success over my grave. Instead, their only regret is that I survived and that they got caught." I made it clear that this wasn't just a botched humiliation attempt. They had nearly succeeded in their deadly plan. As Janet was escorted from the courtroom after Stanley's sentencing, she called out an apology. My response was clear and direct. "Read my lips. I don't care." The divorce proceeded smoothly, as she didn't contest a thing from her prison cell. In a strange twist, I ended up with everything: full ownership of our shared assets and a significant payout after a drawn-out settlement with the law firm. The years of hard work in waste management had paid off. Now, as some joked, I was filthy rich. In the months after the trial, I received a surprising wave of attention. Many women, eager to fill the now vacant role of garbage queen, expressed interest in meeting. None were lawyers, and honestly, I preferred it that way. Today, I find satisfaction in knowing that, against all odds, I survived, stronger and wealthier, while Janet and her lover faced the consequences of their choices. Otto's journey through betrayal, near death, and ultimate resilience shines as a powerful narrative of triumph over deceit and manipulation. Caught in a web of calculated betrayal, he used his unique skills to reclaim not only his life, but his self-worth. The story's tragic irony is that Janet's and Stanley's drive for personal gain ultimately led to their downfall, while Otto's steadfast character emerged as a testament to personal integrity and inner strength. Drawing from reflections by American psychologist Carl Rogers, one might say that in facing the harsh truth of betrayal, Otto experienced a profound personal growth. Rogers suggested that, "When I look at the world, I'm pessimistic, but when I look at people, I am optimistic." Otto's resilience amid betrayal reveals this optimism, showing that individuals, even after profound betrayal, can rise to see new strengths within themselves, ultimately thriving in the face of